What's going on, everyone out there? It's the NFL Exporter live on the Derek Shapiro Show, and you are listening to another great edition of The Final Wrap, your official NFL sports talk show right here on the DerekShapiroShow.com. Make sure you join me each and every Tuesday, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, as I recap all of the NFL and fantasy football action from each week around the NFL. Before we get into our first segment today, let's make sure you know how to connect with us on our social networks. You can find me, the NFL Exporter, on Twitter. Follow me at NFLExporter. You can also go to Facebook.com/NFL Exporter, or you can subscribe to my channel. Go to YouTube.com, click on channels, and in the search engine, put NFL Exporter. For all the above, that is spelled NFLExporter. The call-in number to the show is 716-249-0552. If you prefer to hit us up using email, the email address is nflexporter@yahoo.com. Just leave your name, your city and state, your favorite football team, and whatever it is that you'd like for me to talk about in the show, just put it in the email and I'll make sure to include it in one of my segments. To get things started today, let's take a look at some trending topics around the NFL. And we got some injuries to note here. You have John Beeson, the inside linebacker for the New York Giants, has sustained a foot injury. He's been battling it for a while. He is officially out for the entire season. You also have a couple Rams. Brian Quick, wide receiver. He's got a dislocated shoulder and a torn rotator cuff, so he's likely out for the year. And also Jake Long, their blue chip left tackle, tore his ACL. It's the same ACL that he tore last year, and so he's done for the year. I think Long, even though he's one of the best in the business, is certainly showing to be injury prone. Giovanni Bernard, running back of the Cincinnati Bengals, had a minor hip injury. According to reports, he should be good to go for their home game this week against Jacksonville. And Nick Fairley, the defensive lineman for the Detroit Lions, had a knee injury. Looks like a sprained MCL, PCL. He's going to be gone for about a month. And then Jordan Cameron, the tight end for the Cleveland Browns, suffered a concussion. It's the second one this year, and anytime you start getting into multiple concussions, that certainly can be an issue, something that we want to monitor. And then Lamar Houston, defensive tackle for the Chicago Bears, tore his own ACL. This is the second time this year we've seen a player do this. First, it was Stephen Tulloch, the linebacker for the Detroit Lions. But after Lamar Houston had a sack on Tom Brady, he got up to celebrate, and when he jumped in the air and came down awkward on his knee and tore his ACL. And so he is going to be gone for the entire season as well. Now let's go ahead and talk some fantasy football, and we're going to talk about some players who are on the rise and also some players whose stock is falling at this point. Starting off with the players who are on the rise, I love what Larry Fitzgerald is doing for the Arizona Cardinals. Again, his production is immediately tied to starting quarterback Carson Palmer being in a lineup. As long as Palmer is there, Fitzgerald is a strong number 2 wide receiver for your fantasy football team. This past week, he had 160 receiving yards and a touchdown. That was a big day for Fitzgerald. Next, how about New England tight end Rob Gronkowski? Looks like he is back fully healthy, and that is great for his fantasy owners, myself included. I have him in 2 leagues. Last week, 9 catches, 149 yards, 3 touchdowns. And so as long as he's healthy, and I expect for him to continue to get stronger and stronger as the weeks progress forward, you know that Tom Brady is going to be looking to target Gronkowski a whole lot. How about Buffalo Bills rookie receiver Sammy Watkins? This guy is really starting to come into his own. Back-to-back weeks of over 100 yards receiving. Had a big day against the Jets on Sunday. Only needed 3 catches to get 157 yards. Should have had 2 touchdowns. Got caught out there showboating. Was tackled at the 5-yard line, but made it for it later in the football game. He had a touchdown as well. It seems that him and Kyle Orton are certainly starting to get on the same page, and so that is excellent to see. Next, how about Emmanuel Sanders, wide receiver for the Denver Broncos? He's had a very strong season. Early on was putting up a lot of yards, just could not find the end zone. The last 2 weeks, he's got 4 touchdown receptions. Him and Peyton Manning's chemistry continues to grow. Now that Wes Welker has pretty much been reduced to the last options, you certainly like Emmanuel Sanders emerging to be an excellent target for Peyton Manning out in Denver. How about Matt Stafford of Detroit Lions? Has continued to play well despite being without 5 of his weapons on offense. We all know that Calvin Johnson is missing, but he's also been without Reggie Bush in all 3 of his tight ends. Nonetheless, he had 325 yards, 2 touchdowns last week against the Falcons. The week before, 299 yards, 2 touchdowns against New Orleans. So I expect when Detroit comes back after their bye week, when Stafford has the majority of his weapons back, I expect for his numbers to continue to shoot upwards. T.Y. Hilton of the Indianapolis Colts, this guy has firmly established himself as the number 1 wide receiver for the Indianapolis Colts. Him and Andrew Luck hook up a lot in that passing game. Last week, Hilton, 6 catches, 155 yards. This guy just racks up yards in huge chunks. Also had a touchdown reception as well. He is well on his way to being a top 5 fantasy football wide receiver. How about Denard Robinson, running back for the Jacksonville Jaguars? He seems to have kind of taken the bull by the horns in the absence of Toby Gerhart as well as Storm Johnson, a couple guys who got an opportunity ahead of him. Denard had back-to-back 100-yard games the last 2 weeks against some pretty tough defenses. He did that against Cleveland and against Miami, and so I think he has solidified himself as the starter. Prior to him getting in there, the Jacksonville Jaguars practically had no running game at all. I love Mark Ingram, running back for the New Orleans Saints. Made a huge impact and took full advantage of an opportunity to have the backfield and workload to himself. Last week against the Packers, he had 172 yards, a touchdown, and that was without Pierre Thomas and Kyrie Robinson being in there. Usually Thomas is the change of pace back who receives out the backfield. Robinson comes in to give Ingram a rest, but this guy has proven that when he gets a full workload, he is definitely one of the better running backs in the NFL. How about Odell Beckham Jr.? Now, the Giants had a bye last week, but again, with Victor Cruz no longer being there, Beckham is a guy who can work out of the slot. He can step outside, has great speed, nice size, has good athleticism. I expect for him to be Eli Manning's number 1 target in that Giants passing game now that Victor Cruz is gone. Ben Roethlisberger, how about the day that he had this past weekend against the Colts? 522 yards, 6 TDs. I think that he has definitely found a comfort zone in that Todd Haley offense. He's got one of the best receivers in Antonio Brown at his disposal, but he also has his young receivers starting to come around, being rookie Martavius Bryant and second-year guy Marcus Wheaton. And then Heath Miller is still out there making plays. Plus, you factor in he's got a great running back in Le'Veon Bell to kick it down to in the passing game, and he can pick up a lot of yards after catch. So I think Benny Roethlisberger is certainly a quarterback who's on the rise. Let's talk about Bobby Rainey down out in Tampa Bay. Here's a guy who has been the more productive back even when Doug Martin has been healthy. Martin has an ankle injury. We don't know to what magnitude it is, but you're hearing his name on a trading block. And, let's just face it, Bobby Rainey is the better running back. I think that now that Martin has that ankle injury, Rainey's going to get the bulk of the workload. And I think even when Martin comes back, I think his time is just limited in Tampa Bay. They are not happy. This guy came out, was one of the best rookies in 2012, but the last 2 years have been injury riddled and very unproductive. How about Deshaun Jackson? I tell you, this guy is a big-time player. When he's been healthy and motivated, he's put up the big numbers in Philadelphia, and here he is this year in Washington continuing to do some of the same things, and this guy just has elite speed. I mean, it's so difficult for defensive backs and secondaries to keep up with this guy step for step. Had another 100-yard game, and he's shown it hasn't mattered what quarterback has been in there. He is definitely the number 1 receiver, and so that leaves Pierre Garçon in a tough position. He's not being as productive as Deshaun Jackson. The last guy I wanted to talk about, how about the job Mohamed Sanu has done stepping in while A.J. Green has been out. Sanu had another 100-yard game this past week. I did not think it was a profitable matchup, but he is just making a lot of big plays out there. I think he's a guy, even when A.J. Green comes back, he's been on the football field more with Andy Dalton this year, and I think the rapport, the chemistry, the trust is there, and so I certainly like Mohamed Sanu's prospects the rest of the year. Now let's take a look at some players who on the other side of the coin, their fantasy value is on its way down right now. Starting at the wide receiver position, I'm talking about Reggie Wayne and Andre Johnson. Wayne is with the Indianapolis Colts, and Andrew Luck is putting up all these huge numbers. Now Wayne did not play last week against the Steelers, but prior to him missing that game, Andrew Luck had 5 straight games of over 300 yards, and Reggie Wayne was only really fantasy relevant in one of those games. And, with the way that Andrew Luck spreads the football around, Reggie Wayne being a little bit slower and up in age now, I think this is a situation, and really for all of these players I'm about to talk about, you may want to think about packaging them up in a trade and trying to get some better players on your team, because it appears, at least right now, the trend for these players is their stock is going down. I think Wayne is that guy, with 5 and 6 weeks respectively left in fantasy football seasons before the playoffs start. I don't question that Wayne can have maybe another 2 good games out of the next 5 to 6 weeks, but it's going to be very difficult trying to figure out which games those are going to be, and this is not the time right now to be playing around with your lineup, especially if you're serious about making the playoffs. I mentioned Andre Johnson as well. I like the targets. Last week he did get 12 targets, but only was able to turn that into 55 yards. And, Ryan Fitzpatrick just does not seem, for whatever reason, to be able to get the ball to Johnson. Johnson's another guy, only 1 touchdown on the season. I mean, we're going into week 9. And if you got somebody on your team who scored 1 touchdown, they're not an effective player. I mean, unless they're stacking up tons of yardage, you can't afford to take risk. And so I know that Wayne and Johnson are guys who have been around for quite some time. I certainly think Andre Johnson has more value because he can still get behind defenders with his speed. He's a much more physical of a specimen. But Ryan Fitzpatrick at quarterback, along with the Texans being a team that likes to lean on the run, it certainly has brought his numbers down this year. Julio Jones of the Atlanta Falcons. This guy has not seen the end zone in 5 straight weeks. I can't really tell you what the problem is. I think defenses are just making it a point to really slide coverage over in his direction. But he's got 3 straight weeks of 6 points or less. Again, hasn't found the end zone in 5 straight games. And so right now, I think he's a guy who, again, Atlanta's going to pass a lot. Still has some favorable matchups, against the Saints, against Tampa Bay, against Carolina, within the division. I don't have any question he'll put up some big games, but I think right now there's other players other players that you can bring in who just will provide you more consistent play. Steve Smith Sr., he slowed down, got off to the hot start the first 4 weeks. But if you look at what he's done the last 4 weeks, he's only been fantasy football relevant in that game at Tampa Bay. And so I think he's a guy right now who defenses are starting to pay a lot more attention to. Torrey Smith really hasn't played well. So, watch for Steve Smith Sr. I'm not saying that his season is done, but compared to what he did the first 4 weeks to the last 4, you've certainly seen a huge dip in his production. Cam Newton's another guy. I warned everybody in the preseason. It just didn't look good for Newton. When you're looking at the way that this Panthers team is set up, they can't run the football, and then he only has 2 receivers or passing targets to pass to, in Olsen and Benjamin. Offensive line playing kind of shaky. He's going to be under a lot of duress all season long, and Newton is not the type of quarterback. That Panthers team is not set up for Newton to be passing 35 to 40 times a game. And so I think moving forward, Cam Newton is a matchup-based start. He's not a quarterback that you are starting each and every week with confidence. There's a lot more players, quarterbacks on the waiver wire, who can pretty much provide you what Newton is doing. He may be another guy you're interested in trading. Brandon Marshall, he seems to be very frustrated right now for the Chicago Bears. He's kind of popped up missing the last 3 weeks. Really hasn't played that well. And, I think he's a guy who right now mentally is having some challenges trying to control his anger. He's such a competitor. He wants to win. But right now, not performing well. Hasn't seen the end zone the last 3 games. I know his owners are starting to get a little antsy with him. Ben Tate, running back of the Cleveland Browns. His stock is certainly sliding. The last 2 games, the Browns as a team are only averaging 55 rush yards a game. It appears that losing center Alex Mack was a huge loss for this team. I don't know if it's by chance or that's just the way it's worked out, but the Browns running game has struggled the last 2 games without Alex Mack being in. What's going on with Julius Thomas? I'm not saying that you want to trade this guy by any means. Got off to an extremely hot start with 9 touchdowns in the first 5 games. And maybe that was it. Maybe it was, all of the touchdowns that he scored that really made defenses focus their attention on him. But the last 2 weeks, he's only had 2 points in each game. And I know for fantasy owners, that is not what they're accustomed to seeing. I know that they put his contract talks on hold. I don't know if that's had any effect on his motivation, but right now he is certainly disappointing his owners. He's looking to rebound this week playing New England. Brandon Oliver, running back for the San Diego Chargers. He certainly slowed up, got off to a hot start his first 2 games against the Jets and Jaguars, but the last 2 weeks against Kansas City and Denver, not so much. Now, you like his dual threat ability. Again, I think he's a guy that even when Ryan Matthews comes back, he'll be able to maintain getting double-digit touches between running the football and catching out of the backfield. But San Diego not able to run the football effectively. Another tough matchup this week against the Miami Dolphins. I think Oliver's a guy right now who you certainly need to see a double-digit day out of, or your confidence in him is going to start sliding. Marshawn Lynch, he's another guy out for the Seattle Seahawks. We all know that Lynch wanted to get paid in the offseason. It does not appear that the Seahawks are going to re-sign him. And, Marshawn's a guy who keeps it close to the vest, doesn't speak to the media, so you really don't know what's going on in his head. But he's a guy, I don't want to say he's mentally fragile, but he's definitely a player who his emotions can get the best of him. Again, you won't know that because you won't hear it come directly from his mouth. But I could tell you this much. His last 3 games, he's only got 6 points. This was a consensus top 5 running back in fantasy football drafts this year. And so, when you're spending money on the first round pick, this is a guy you're expecting to be a workhorse for your team. And right now, Lynch in that Seattle running game is struggling mightily. Doug Martin, we talked about him already. Ankle injury on the trading block. I don't know what Tampa Bay is planning to do with him, but has just been completely ineffective this year, even in the games he's played. The only way that you want Doug Martin in your lineup is if you think he's going to score a touchdown. Other than that, this guy's only giving you about 40 all-purpose yards a game, and that's certainly not going to cut it from a starting running back. Bishop Sankey as well, the rookie. We all had high expectations for him when he finally took over in the Tennessee Titans backfield. Continues to be unproductive. This is the 4th straight game where he's yet to get over 70 yards rushing. Hasn't gotten the end zone. And so, as much as you like a running back who gets the full workload, he is being very unproductive right now. And then last, we spoke on Jordan Cameron when we spoke on our injuries. He's really only been effective in 1 football game this year. Now you're going to start having some concussion concerns. And so here's a guy who was arguably one of the top tight ends coming into fantasy football this year, has been a huge disappointment. And so, those players who I just named there on the latter end, you want to give some serious consideration into packaging these guys up and shipping them out for some better quality. A lot of these guys have big names. And again, I certainly expect over the next 5 to 6 weeks for these players to have a couple good games. But look at their upcoming schedules, evaluate your matchups, and I think there's certainly some good value there. Those players are big names, and again, you can probably get some very quality players in return who could be more consistent. That's going to wrap up our first segment. It's the NFL Exporter on the Derek Shapiro Show. You are listening to the final wrap. When we come back, we'll start recapping our Week 8 games from around the NFL, so stay tuned. Welcome back to the final wrap with your host, the NFL Exporter, live on DerekShapiroShow.com. Let's go ahead and start recapping our Week 8 games from around the NFL. Things got started on Thursday night. It was the Denver Broncos beating the San Diego Chargers 35-28. In that ball game, pretty much the difference was Denver's ability to run the football. Denver had 139 yards, the Chargers only 61, and then also 2 turnovers. Now, San Diego had 2 turnovers. Denver escaped with 2 turnovers. There was a very close call on a kickoff return in which the player was called down on the field. I think it was one of those plays that whatever call was made on the field, there was not enough evidence to overturn it. So that could have easily been 1 turnover for Denver. And then also was a very horrible call. Peyton Manning threw a rare interception in the end zone. He was trying to pass to Wes Welker, and there were 3 defenders who Manning threw the football into coverage. That was a very, very bad call. The ref called pass interference on a defender, which negated the interception by San Diego. And so when you lose a game that close, certainly playing against Peyton Manning and losing a turnover battle, it never bodes well for you. And then you also have to run the football effectively to try to keep Manning and that offense off the football field. Just had too many opportunities. The star of this game was Emmanuel Sanders, the wide receiver for the Broncos, had 120 receiving yards and 3 touchdowns. And so the Broncos now improved to 6-1. The Chargers are now 5-3. Next, you taking a look at the Detroit Lions beating the Atlanta Falcons. This game was played over in London, and it was certainly a tale of 2 halves. The Lions came out very flat. Atlanta got off to a 21-0 lead at halftime, but in the second half, it was costly turnovers by Matt Ryan, and particularly 1 interception, and the Falcons defense could just not hold its own. Matt Stafford ended with 325 passing yards, 2 touchdowns. Golden Tate continues to be one of the best free agent pickups in the offseason, has stepped in and paid big dividends while Calvin Johnson has been out with an injury. Tate has 7 catches, 151 yards, 1 touchdown, and it was a last-second field goal that the Lions made. Now, this was very controversial. Actually, the Lions place kicker Matt Prater missed a 43-yard field goal, which would have given Atlanta the win, but there was a delay of game call, which made the missed field goal null and void. And so they got a chance to re-kick again from 48 yards, and he made it that time. And so that was a big win for Detroit. They have been constantly finding ways to win football games, even in the absence of their star players. And so Detroit is now 6-2. Atlanta is now 2-6. The Kansas City Chiefs got a big-time win at home, 34-7, as they steamrolled their in-state rival, the St. Louis Rams, 34-7. Jamal Charles only needed 13 carries to pick up 73 yards and score 2 TDs. Niles Davis came in backup duty, scored a touchdown on the ground, also ran a kickoff back 95 yards, and it was Kansas City's defense. They got to rookie Austin Davis for the Rams for 7 sacks and an interception, and so the Chiefs now improved to 4-3. You're looking at the Rams struggling mighty, now at 2-6. Next, we had the Houston Texans take on the Tennessee Titans, and things got off to a slow start for Houston, but Arian Foster and company certainly were able to get things in order. A huge disparity on the ground here. You got the Texans behind 151 yards by Arian Foster on the ground. Houston ran for 212 yards. Tennessee only ran for 36 yards. And so, when you can't run the football effectively, you're going to have turnovers. Tennessee had 2. Houston was able to keep their nose clean and not have any. And as I mentioned, Arian Foster, this guy is just a monster. 172 all-purpose yards, 3 total touchdowns. Zach Mettenberg, rookie quarterback for Tennessee, played pretty well his first start. 27 out of 41, 299 yards, 2 touchdowns and an interception. But again, the inability to run the football just gave Houston too many times, and they could not stop Arian Foster. That win improves Houston to 4-3, and the Tennessee Titans now dropped to 2-6. Next, it was the Minnesota Vikings and Tampa Bay Buccaneers. We needed overtime to figure this low-scoring affair out, but it was the Vikings who got a forced fumble that was recovered by rookie Anthony Barr. He scampered in 27 yards yards to give Minnesota a 19-13 win in overtime. Again, in this one, not a whole lot of offense. Tampa Bay had 2 costly turnovers. You figure you lose a game this close and you're turning the football over twice at home. This Tampa Bay team is just not very good this year. I thought head coach Lovie Smith will be able to come in there and kind of change the culture of that team. I hope he can stay around. It does not look well for the Buccaneers at this point. Teddy Bridgewater, rookie quarterback from Minnesota, got back to playing some clean football, 241 yards, a touchdown, no turnovers. Jerick McKinnon paced him on the ground with 83 receiving yards. Cordero Patterson paced him through the air with 86 receiving yards. As we mentioned, Doug Martin got hurt in this one for Tampa Bay, and so we expect for Bobby Rainey to take over and continue to progress moving forward. Next, Seattle Seahawks needed a last-minute drive, and we've become accustomed to seeing this. You know that Russell Wilson is a winner. So it was Wilson to Wilson. It was Russell Wilson hitting Luke Wilson, his tight end, on a 23-yard touchdown to give Seattle a very close win, 13-9 on the road at the Panthers. This was a very even game. There were only 2 minutes in time of possession. Seattle had maybe 40 more yards of offense. Each team had 2 turnovers, and so it just really came down to Russell Wilson, that championship experience, putting the team on his back, orchestrating a last-minute drive to give Seattle a much-needed win. Seahawks are now 4-3. Carolina now 3-4-1. Next, we see the Cincinnati Bengals knock off the Baltimore Ravens at home. That was a game that Cincinnati needed desperately. They were 0-2-1 in their last 3 contests. Baltimore came in 5-2. I thought the more confident bunch. But again, Joe Flacco, and I don't understand it. He's a 7-year veteran. He's been in the playoffs, deep into the playoffs, 6 out of those 7 years. They've won a Super Bowl, yet when it comes to Joe Flacco playing on the road, he's a very inconsistent quarterback, and I just don't understand it. In the game that you end up losing by 3 on the road, it was Flacco's 2 interceptions that really cost Baltimore this game. Now, Cincinnati did have 2 turnovers as well, but again, when you're playing at home, you're certainly going to have a little bit more momentum. Also, Mohamed Sanu, again, we spoke about him in our first segment, has continued to do a great job, had 125 yards, had the big plays in the air for Cincinnati. Ultimately, it was Andy Dalton on a quarterback keeper on 4th and 1 from the goal line to give Cincinnati the win. Cincinnati now 4-2-1, Baltimore 5-3. Miami Dolphins beat the Jacksonville Jaguars, and it wasn't pretty. But again, rookie Blake Bortles continues to make the mistakes. He threw 2 interceptions and also had a fumble. And you look at Jacksonville losing this game by 14 points. The difference in a game that was very evenly matched, the defense for Miami intercepted Bortles twice, ran both of those back for touchdowns, and there's your 14-point difference in this ball game. Ryan Tannehill continues to be inconsistent, 196 yards, a touchdown. Denard Robinson, we talked about him in our fantasy segment as well, did good, had 108 rushing yards against a very tough Miami Dolphins defense. Miami now improves to 4-3. Jacksonville is 1-7. We've seen the New England Patriots just simply beat down the Chicago Bears 51-23. Before you could even look up, this one was over. It was 31-0 at halftime. And I tell you, Tom Brady, he was damn near perfect, completed 30 out of 35 passes, 354 yards, 5 touchdowns. Found Rob Gronkowski for 3 of those TDs. Brandon LaFell got in on the action with 124 receiving yards and a touchdown. For the Bears, I'm not going to read their stats. This is a team who we know, with Martellus Bennett, Jay Cutler, Matt Forte, Alshon Jeffrey, Brandon Marshall, we understand they have one of the best set of offensive skill players, arguably the best in the entire NFL. But when you look at this Bears defense, there are huge question marks. They're not able to get a pass rush. They're getting nothing out of their free agent pickup, Jared Allen, this year. They can't stop the run. And they damn sure can't stop the pass. And so, unless this team's defense is going to get better, I don't care how good they are on offense, they can't stop anybody right now. They are absolutely garbage. I think the locker room is on the verge of imploding. That win gave New England, moved them up to 6-2. The Bears now dropped to 3-5. In other action, we seen the Buffalo Bills beat up on the New York Jets 43-23, and this one was all about Buffalo. Kyle Orton only needed to complete 10 passes to rack up 238 yards and 4 TDs. 3 of those completions came to Sammy Watkins for 157 yards and a touchdown. The rookie really coming on strong. And it was New York's inability to move the football, and ultimately the same mistakes that kill them week in and week out. They finally had enough. Benched quarterback Geno Smith, who threw 3 interceptions in the first quarter. The Jets had 6 for the game. And obviously, if you're turning the football over 6 times in the football game in the NFL, there's no way on earth that you are going to win. Next, we've seen the Arizona Cardinals get a big-time victory at home over the Philadelphia Eagles, 24-20. Now, this is a game here, again, very evenly matched game. This was actually one of the best games on Sunday. I watched a whole lot of this football game. These teams went back and forth, definitely played some good defense. But you're looking at Philadelphia on the road. You lose by 4. You got 3 turnovers, and it's costly, you know. And then the other thing I noticed is that Shady McCoy is one of the best running backs in the NFL. I understand that the Eagles are missing some players on the offensive side, on their offensive line. But when you've got 1st and goal, which is what Philadelphia had, it was a tie ball game, 17-17, and this is ultimately what it came down to. The Eagles were unable to punch it in from 5 yards out, and I'm saying, if you got arguably the best running back in football, there's no way in hell that you should not be able to run the football in from 5 yards out. So, you know, in turn, they settle for a field goal. Arizona comes back, gets a big 75-yard TD strike from Carson Palmer, the rookie John Brown, who's played really well this year, to give Arizona a 24-20 lead. The Eagles had a chance to go ahead in this ball game. They got down to the Cardinals maybe 10-yard line, but just was not able to get it in the end zone. And so Arizona improves to 6-1. Philadelphia now 5-2. Let's go ahead and run to another break. When we come back, we'll finish recapping our Week 8 games from around the NFL. It's the final wrap on DerekShapiroShow.com. We'll be right back after this break. Thank you for returning to the Final Wrap, your official NFL and fantasy football show on DerekShapiroShow.com. Again, don't forget to join me each and every Tuesday at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time right here on DerekShapiroShow.com to recap each week of NFL and fantasy football action. Now jumping back into our games from Week 8. It was the Cleveland Browns barely getting past the Oakland Raiders at home. And again, the turnover battle ultimately is what's seen the outcome in this game. It was pretty even, but you figure Cleveland's winning by 10, and it was 3 turnovers by the Raiders that ultimately allowed for Cleveland to win this ball game. Brian Hoyer, 275 yards and a touchdown. Rookie Derek Carr was able to match him with 328 and a touchdown as well. Cleveland has really been struggling to run the football lately. They have been averaging 55 yards a contest after being one of the top rushing attacks in the NFL the first 5 weeks of the season. And I certainly think that if they put out one more poor performance on the ground, you can certainly attribute that to Pro Bowl center Alex Mack not being there. He was lost a few weeks ago in their win at home against Pittsburgh for the season. Again, this Raiders team still trying to find its first win of the season. I know that the frustration has to be mounting each and every week, but they're coming out and playing hard. But Cleveland able to capitalize on those 3 turnovers, flip that into 10 points, and that was pretty much the difference in the Browns winning this ball game. Browns now 4-3. Raiders now 0-7. Next, it was the Pittsburgh Steelers, led by Ben Roethlisberger, had one of the best regular season performances all time by a quarterback. 522 yards, 6 touchdowns, no interceptions. Pittsburgh put up 51 points on Indianapolis by beating the Colts 51-34. Andrew Luck made history by becoming the first quarterback in NFL history to have 6 straight games with over 300 yards passing. He had 400 yards, three TDs, but 2 very costly interceptions. And the difference in this one was pretty much a time of possession. Pittsburgh had the ball for 19 more minutes than Indianapolis. And also, Indianapolis is going to have to find a way to run the football. Andrew Luck can definitely get it done in the air. But when you look at the Steelers being able to get 117 yards rushing, Indianapolis only 63. At some point, Indianapolis is going to have to find a running game, or they're going to find themselves out of the playoffs very early once again. Big win for Pittsburgh. Le'Veon Bell continues to put up 100-plus all-purpose yard games. That's 8 straight for him. And Antonio Brown, this guy is just simply the best right now. 10 catches, 133 yards, 2 more touchdowns. I tell you, this guy is a big-time NFL player and without question, one of the most dominant studs in fantasy football. Moving on, New Orleans Saints got a much-needed victory at home, beating the Green Bay Packers 44-23. And once again, it was 3 turnovers by the Green Bay Packers that allowed Drew Brees and that offense some extra possessions. Now, Aaron Rodgers did have 418 yards passing, a touchdown, 2 interceptions, but also had 1 on the ground. You look at Drew Brees, 311 passing yards, 3 touchdowns. But the difference in this one was running back Mark Ingram from the Saints on the ground, had 24 carries, 172 yards, a touchdown. Was really able to give New Orleans the balance they need. And Drew Brees, one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL working off of play action, certainly was able to work that quite a bit with how well Ingram is running. I think there were 2 key plays in this game that really stood out to me that could have been a difference in Green Bay winning or having the opportunity to win this game. The first play was Eddie Lacy was running extremely well. The Saints really had no answers to stop him in the open field. Green Bay got down inside the 5-yard line of New Orleans and decided to pass the football 3 straight times. They all ended in incompletions and had to settle for a field goal. As a matter of fact, you know what? They actually got an interception out of that possession. And I'm saying, why aren't you running Eddie Lacy? The Saints defenders at that point were basically moving out of the way with the way that he was bowling defenders over. So there was no reason that Green Bay should have not ran that football that close in. That's what you got a big power back like Eddie Lacy for. And then only being down 23-16 in this ball game, only down a touchdown. The Packers were at midfield, and instead of punting and trying to pin New Orleans in their own territory, they decided to go for it on 4th and 1. Missed that opportunity. Drew Brees comes right back with a touchdown pass to stretch the lead out to 2 touchdowns, and that was pretty much all she wrote. The biggest news coming out of this one, Aaron Rodgers came up lame on his hamstring. It's good that Green Bay has a bye this week to give him ample time to recover. Doctors have said it's minor. It should not be an issue moving forward. Nonetheless, that loss dropped Green Bay to 5-3. New Orleans now improves to 3-4. Next, it was the Washington Redskins on Monday Night Football, getting a huge win in Dallas, 20-17 in overtime. And I tell you, this was another game where there were certainly some missed opportunities for the Cowboys. Now, you figure that the Redskins did an excellent job blitzing quarterback Tony Romo. They sacked him 5 times, and you know that they watch a lot of film this week because Romo is infamous for spinning out to his left or right, primarily his left, when the pass rush comes. And every time he attempted to do that, there was a defender right there for the Redskins waiting to corral him or contain him in the pocket. So great job there. And ultimately, when you look at this ball game, Colt McCoy, although he threw an interception, completed 25 out of 30 passes for 299 yards against this Cowboys defense. You look at Tony Romo, decent game, 209 yards, a touchdown. DeMarco Murray had his 8th straight game running for over 100 yards. He now has over 1,000 on the season. He is on a record-breaking pace. Did not get into the end zone, though. And then Alfred Morris for Washington, 73 yards of TD. We talked about Deshaun Jackson, just a big play guy, 136 yards. But ultimately, when you look at Dallas, at what they did in the red zone, DeMarco Murray has got to do a better job protecting the football. At this point in the season, through the Cowboys' first 8 games, he's got 5 fumbles. And it's just not acceptable. You cannot put the football on the ground that much. So that is something that he's going to have to shore up. He really doesn't have any more room to fumble the football this year. It's going to come back and haunt Dallas. And this was one of those games. Murray caught a nice pass out the backfield, took it up the sidelines. It was at the 5-yard line trying to fight for more yardage. 4 Redskins defenders converged on them, and as they were bringing them down, somebody was able to muscle and strip the football loose that the Redskins recovered. So that was one time where Dallas could have put up a touchdown or 3 points. And then later in that game, when Dallas was inside the 5-yard line, you have the best rushing attack in the NFL. Why aren't you running the football? I mean, even if it wasn't with DeMarco Murray, they've got some pretty capable backup running backs. You run the football in. They decide to come out, pass the football, 3 straight times, and it ends up being incompleted. And I'll tell you the key to this one here, Dez Bryant had a key drop. Now, I like wide receivers who catch the football with their hands, and Dez certainly does that a lot, but it was a 3rd down play. It was a quick slant, and he actually had coverage beat, but he attempted to catch the ball with his body, which allowed for the defender to get a hand in there and knock it away. If he extends his arms and catches that ball with his hands, that's a touchdown. Those 2 missed opportunities end up costing the Dallas Cowboys a win at home because they only lost this football game by 3 points. Now, the other big news to come out of this one, Tony Romo had to leave the game for a certain amount of time with a back injury. He got kneed right in his back. X-rays have already come back negative. All appears to be fine with Romo. The reason it was such a big issue is because he had back surgery in the off season, and so you just wonder, could that shot at somewhere down the lines, cause some damage or kind of reflare any side effects from when he had back surgery in the off season. Nonetheless, that loss drops Dallas to 6-2. The Redskins 2-game losing streak. They're back with a little bit of life. They are now 3-5. All right, that is going to wrap up our show today. I thank everybody for listening and coming to DerekShapiroShow.com. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter at NFLExporter. Make sure to send a friend request. We are going hard over there. That's Facebook.com/NFLExporter. I've got a ton of people on Facebook who hit up the page and we talk NFL and fantasy football. Then make sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel. Go to youtube.com, click on channels in the search engine, put NFL Exporter. Again, for all the above, that's NFLExporter. Also, the call-in number to the show, 716-249-0552. Feel free to call in. Talk some NFL or fantasy football with me, or if you prefer to use email, the email address is NFLExporter@yahoo.com. Again, just leave your name, your city and state, your favorite football team, and whatever it is you'd like for me to talk about during the show, just stick it in the email and I'll make sure to include it in one of our segments. Everybody have a safe and enjoyable week. Enjoy week 9 around the NFL. Make sure you're here next Tuesday, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I am the NFL Exporter signing out for the final wrap, 1100.